All right. Good morning, everyone. Dan with Tradingology here. Welcome to October. Are you guys ready for winter time? We shall see. All right. New Zoom meeting. Everyone, I believe, is probably getting the updates right now. So far, so good. You guys are rolling in. So good to see you. Happy Tuesday. It's raining here in my neck of the woods. Hopefully, you got some good weather out there.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, good morning, sir.
What is up?
The temperature was yesterday, but we took a big old drop today. Yesterday was our last day in the warmth for sure, I'm sure.
Oh, we must have gotten what you had yesterday because it's beautiful here. It's like 70 something.
Yeah, we got up to 87 yesterday.
Wow.
Then the front rolled through. We had a big old thunderstorm, and now it's highs of 55 the rest of the week.
Oh, no. Yeah, we're hitting 82 today, it says.
Yeah, prepare yourself.
Thanks. If you could hold that storm up and cold front, I'd appreciate it.
You never know what happens when it hits those Great Lakes, right? It could bust up or it could turn into who knows what.
Yeah. Well, just go out there and put your arms up so, kind of block it a little bit.
I redirected with my umbrella for you.
Thanks. Well, I am so glad I added to my shorts this morning.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're heading lower. We're definitely
right there.
Good morning, Asham. Asham has been a busy little boy, asking me a million questions in the new real-time update service that Strong Market's doing.
Well, he's getting some nice real-time updates, that's for sure.
No, you don't have to apologize, Asham. I'm just kidding you. I'm joking with you. That's what it's for. That's what it's for.
You kid. Yeah, there it goes. Pretty beautiful VA trade there this morning too. We can cover quickly. And we did have Tom is not in here. I know Tom was sending me some emails. I'll get this on the recording form and I'll cover it. But yeah, I had a nice little setup for at a potential peak there, 10%, 1.6 in the eighth. Then starting out some zeros in the binary trend starting to form out. Oversold, starting to drop down from a 14 to a 12. We were leveled off on the cross column, so that was the only one that wasn't a solid up trend. And looking at the 4-hour chart, we saw a nice little setup, just barely bars moving up, nice down bias there. So pretty much everybody across the board had a nice down bias, even looking at our tricks with Eric.
Yep.
Beautiful lineup there of, 0.24 in the first 5 minutes. Then we're peaking that fifth column on the charts there, so good signals to exit that trade anytime, and a nice slow exit too. Anywhere you got out there was nice and clean.
Absolutely. And yesterday was just the same. Good. The signals were all up, and boy, that it took off right at the beginning of the day.
Yeah.
Today it was all down. Just really, really nice down signal. Man, it's just it's been 2 good days.
Yeah, that's a nice way to start the week and start the month of October now.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mike.
So, Tom, if you're catching this, let me know if you got any questions, and I'll be trading emails with you too. So, yeah, beautiful setups there. Anybody taking some trades this morning? How are you guys doing? We'll keep it a group activity. It's not just us here to come and puke and throw up info. We want to get your guys' side of it and hear how you're doing. I could probably delete these red lines. These are from last week when I had my targets in there. So interesting how that comes around, though.
It did. Oh, wow. Look at that. Perfect. Yeah.
We'll delete that one. Goodbye. Just so it's not in the way of everybody else's active positions. I always joke, it's like, I got a line in there, but maybe it's stopping the movement.
Well, the breaking news, the reason why the market looks like it tanked, of course, this is a setup ahead of time. We had the, this morning, it was just pretty clear that there was a lot of weakness in the market. And my pre-market update was, I was adding to shorts, still short and adding to shorts just at the open. The U.S. manufacturing economy the U.S. manufacturing economy contracts to worst level in a decade.
Wow.
The gauge of U.S. manufacturing from the Institute for Supply Management showed the sector contracted to the lowest level of more than 10 years in September. Global trade remains the most significant issue, as demonstrated by the contraction in new export orders that began in July 2019. Really, that's horrible. So I think that's a pretty good sign that we're going into a recession like we talked about before. Not good.
Yep, it's one of those we talked about that, those are following the other channels that we're on. It's not a matter of when it's going to be here. It's here and people just don't know it yet. So the recession has started. It just may not have hit your pocketbook yet.
Yeah, for sure.
Mike says, not sure why the ZB jumped up this morning. Got a treasury note making some action there, Mike? Which one's the ZB again? Is that the 10-year? Dave, you probably remember that off the top of your head. I don't have the ZB.
What's that?
The ZB, which note is that?
30-year.
There you go. Thanks, Don.
Yeah, there you go.
So that jumped? They're saying?
Really? Yeah, so rates decline if it's jumping. Oh, I shall be right back. I forgot something on the stove. Hold on a second, guys.
Okay. Yeah, so if the ZB's jumping, then it probably is from rates getting ready to fall along with it, just like everything else, just like the Fed rates have dropped last week or whatever week that was that they lowered again. So that probably makes sense. All right, so the question now is just how far will it go? YM's in negatives, NQ still positive because it was higher. RTY is positive, so we got back and forth right now. The YM and the ES are both positive. Oh, excuse me, YM and RTY are positive. But I'm sure it won't take long for them to get down to the negatives. 0.3 and 0.22 and moving down. All right. There we go. Sorry, guys, I'm half losing my voice lately. It feels like so. If I sound funny, that's why. Well, one more line to get rid of here. Move that. I could leave it in there for my old targets. That's kind of interesting how that works out. Yeah, so a few people have asked too. Just a quick update there on how we're. Oh, wow, look at the number on that. 256, 248 negative right now. That's huge. But looking at where normal typically is, and you can see historically on these, if I go to yesterday, we see, normal, the signal levels there and the volumes are less than 100 when they're peaking out to either the positive or the negative side. So to see this breaking 250, we know that's a lot of down volume coming in there. 300 now. But setting up right before that, even before that red arrow paints, what we're looking for is the down move. So it peaked to the top, closer to the normals, less than 100. And the next one here was 74. So not a huge move down, but that's what we're looking for. But we were setting up for short from yesterday. So this is just a matter of some price manipulation. Then the real moves coming here that we see. But same thing played across the board. Peak, move down before the huge drop. That's your clues to look for that. And now we're starting to get a little bit more negative where that was positive across the board. So it definitely looks like it's going to continue lower. But then the same thing will hold true the other side. Once that peak happens and it starts going up, it may move back up and we're way below the cloud. So that's definitely an extended move, obviously.
Yeah, that shows the volatility. So we saw the volatility yesterday in the markets. Prices were just jumping up and down. I mean, you don't even have to look at a chart. You can just take a look at your quote board.
Oh yeah, watch these numbers here.
those just were jumping all over the place yesterday, and we didn't get the decline yesterday, but I think today definitely.
Look at the overextended move here, Dave. It's 300 it was to the negative on the YM.
Wow.
And going back other days, that typically doesn't go over 100 on the the ebbs and flows of positive and negative.
Yeah.
It hit 300 and 300 above for a little while. But I was telling the guys, I was cluing them in on, here's the clues we look for. Even before this painted in, we had the downslope on all of them right before it actually happened.
Yep. And what I'm doing now is for stocks, at least, I put it on a 4. Well, I put it on a 10-minute, then I got a 4 daily and a weekly, and they were all negative.
Yeah, New Rug says you lost some of your deals. I can shoot you over a workspace, the New Rug, you bet. It's in my plethora of emails, so sorry I didn't get back to you right away.
So Isham had some questions, I guess. If Isham, if you want to ask those questions now, please go ahead. To be honest with you, I didn't quite understand exactly what you were trying to ask. It's about selling stocks. Are you talking about shorting? Shorting. Okay. Okay. So you can buy stocks long, of course, and you can sell stocks short. But it's pretty easy. So, if you don't own it, right. So what happens is, let's say, can you bring up another window there and let's type in, I don't know, what do you want to use as an example, Isham? Is there any stock in particular that you're looking at? Okay, well, let's bring up Apple then. That's an easy one.
All right, I'll just get up a clear deal here. If my keyboard works. There we go. Let's move this. Let's bring over a daily chart. $226 we're at right now for Apple.
Yeah. So right up at the top there, what happens is it will tell you. Is it going to tell you in there or no? Does it say? No, it doesn't say anything. So right up at the top where it has the quote, 226.29, right to the right of that, it will have something called HTB, which is hard to borrow. If it's hard to borrow that stock, because what you're doing when you short a stock is you actually have to borrow it from someone else who owns that stock. You're going to borrow it from them, and that means that you're basically shorting the position. They don't lose their position. They still own it, but it's kind of like a lease. You're kind of leasing it. And so you sell it, and then you get that stock. You have to, well, you don't get it. The person who owns it still holds it. Well, no. Well, as far as the settlement goes, you take the stock, you borrow it from the owner, and then what you have to do is when you buy it back is you have to go into the market and buy the stock just like you would shorting a YM contract. You're basically selling YM and you're buying it back later. Well, you're selling Apple stock and you're buying it back later, and then you deliver back to them the stock that you borrowed. When you get so it's a very easy process. It's the same thing as shorting the YM. You're selling the contract, you buy it back later. You sell Apple stock, you buy it back later. So to do an open short position, you simply go ahead and sell it, and then you take you have the short position as long as it's not hard to borrow. So what hard to borrow means, HTB, it means that there's not a lot of stock out there that is available to borrow because the only stocks normally that you can borrow are in margin accounts. So in some issues, it's very hard to borrow. Bring up CHI for an example. Don, this is this is specifically for shorting stocks. If you don't want to, let's see if you don't want to use options. I think if you go into the main window, it'll show you the hard to borrow or not hard to borrow. I'm not sure. It doesn't look like they come up here. I'm pretty sure this issue, the CHI, is hard to borrow because it's a convertible fund stock, and almost all of it is not on margin. So here's, there it is. HTB is right over to the right there, next to the quote. Yep. And so what that means is that here's the way when you short, let's say you own CHI, it pays a dividend. So if you click that arrow underline to the left, there's an arrow pointing towards the, down a little bit. Towards where the prices are, it says last X. The arrow, click that, and it'll give you the yield. It says 9.23%. And so, in order to get that yield on the stock, 9.23%, you can't hold this in a margin account. Well, you could, but what'll happen is whoever's lending you the money to borrow the stock, if you margin it, are collecting that yield. So typically, you're not going to buy CHI in a margin account because you want to collect that 9.23% yield. So you don't want to do margin on that, because then the yield and the dividends actually end up going to whoever lent you the money. And what that does is it satisfies the margin interest that you're paying for holding that stock. And then, so you want to hold, that's why it's hard to borrow, because nobody's holding it in a margin account. In order for you to borrow stock, to short it, like Apple, it has to be held in a margin account. And I'm sure there's a lot of people who, are buying Apple stock on margin, because it's a speculative stock. Put in Apple there. I don't think they don't pay a dividend, I don't believe. No, they do. They have a little dividend, 1.36%. So for large, like for hedge funds or for institutional investors, they probably won't buy that on margin, but almost everybody else, including retail investors and speculators, are going to buy that on margin. And so they're not going to get that yield. And then you can borrow it. So it doesn't say hard to borrow. It says, actually it says ETB. I haven't seen that one. I guess that's new. ETB means easy to borrow. So if you look at that and you say easy to borrow or hard to borrow, you want to short the ones that say easy to borrow. And that's pretty easy. So you sell it just like you would on an opening position, just like any other stock, buy it back, and you're out of the position. Does that help, Isham?
And so to be clear, what he's meaning there too is, if it did make Slaypen, or if you're slightly confused where he's saying you have to borrow it from someone else that owns it, you don't actually do that yourself. The brokerage takes care of that for you. You just click sell, or if you have a certain price you don't want to sell at market, you sell it whatever. Like maybe you want to sell it at, or go back to Apple, like you put in a sell order for 230 because you want to short it at 230. You just put in your sell order, it hits that, you get filled. The brokerage handles everything behind the scenes. They'll take it from someone else, they hold it for you. That's just the nature of being able to sell on margin. They do it for you. You just click sell, you click buy.
That's right. Yeah, you don't have to actually go start calling people. Hey, do you have any Apple stock I could short? I could borrow. I want to short.
So if the position goes against you, like if I go short at 230 and Apple rallies up to 250, 240, whatever, we're going to be negative. So that's the risk in shorting. That's what you call the naked short, right? Where I only have one position and it can go to infinity. There's nothing to say Apple can't go to $1 million where you would blow up your account unless you put in a buy to cover order above it as a stop loss. So yeah, if it goes against you, it's just like anything else. You'll go negative and you'll watch your your P&L go negative if the stock goes against your trade.
Yeah, it's just like shorting YM or selling YM. Then if it goes against you and it goes up, you're going to be underwater.
The big difference is when you're shorting a stock, you know, that's whatever that price of that stock is. So if you sell, you know, 226 is a very expensive stock. So how much can you afford? That's the question.
And that's why the requirements for the money that you have to put up in order to sell the stock are pretty high, because they do have an unlimited upside potential. I've known some people who have shorted biotech stocks. Big mistake. Never short biotech.
Oh yeah, then they just take off because they.
Oh, and they get overnight. They get bought out. You know, there's a takeover or something, or there's a
someone buys them outright.
Acquisition.
Yep.
And the stock goes from $20 to 200. Oh man, you're gonna be on the hook for a lot of money. So
he says it's kind of better to actually buy and hold a stock. Well, that's, you know, if you can identify someone you want to buy and hold for long-term investing, absolutely.
Yeah.
The risk is it going to zero versus
right.
it can't go to infinity. So it's not a undefined risk.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I would never short a stock unless it's something like a 3X. In fact, about a month ago, I shorted a 3X S&P 500 ETF. And that's a whole different ball game there. And I actually shorted, I forgot the symbol.
And I did quickly look at the real-time updates where you were talking about, Sean was asking some questions where it was looking for a short signal. It wasn't necessarily looking for a short signal, Sean. It was, excuse me. And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong here, since you're the one that was running the positions, is he was already short yesterday, Sean, waiting to turn down. So that's where you can use like the micro contracts, where you start out with one or two, because you're expecting the down move based on our analysis and what we're seeing. That yesterday we didn't get, well, there was one, but then it came back. So it wasn't really a big down move yesterday. So it was short, short, short. Accumulating short positions throughout yesterday is basically what happened. Then today, all the indicators were also lining up for shorts, where it was, and the message to you was they're still short and adding to shorts, waiting for this to happen. So it wasn't waiting for a signal to enter. It was already being short contracts, most likely in the micros, to hold it overnight. And then the move happens, and now everything's in profits. So there was no waiting for a signal today. He was already in a short position. Does that make sense? Sorry if we're going back and forth a little bit there, but I just saw your question, so I wanted to make sure everything was clear for you.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah, we put on a short yesterday. This morning, added to it. If I exit or something like that, I'll let you know in the real time update.
So this is a good example of scaling in and scaling out, whereas you can accumulating yesterday, nice move happens where you exit a couple of them and not all of them, so it can still run.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, as I mentioned in the room, I never I build positions. I don't put all of it in at one time. I'll scale in and out of positions. It's UPRO. If you bring up UPRO, take a look at that. I don't know if you guys are interested, but it's add to your kind of knowledge of the markets.
Bam.
Yeah. So UPRO is a 3X ETF on the S&P 500. And so I shorted it some time ago. It was about a month ago. But here's why. There was actually a discussion I had with another trader, and they wanted to buy a 3X short ETF. which will rise if stocks decline. And they wanted to hold it for a year. The problem that I had with that type of position, that I would have with that type of position, is that in order to generate the 3x returns that these ETFs are promoting, they have to go into the markets and sell futures contracts. Well, there's something called contango. And what happens is over the life of that futures contract, in order to generate these 3x returns, and by the way, the 3x returns are only for the day. Only for the day. So right now, UPRO is down 1.05%. The S&P 500 is down 0.42%. So it's a little bit less than double, but it'll get there. It'll get to triple pretty soon. So it's not exactly triple, but it's.
Well, if you're 0.4, it's, yeah, you're dead on. 0.4 to 12, 4 times 3, 12, baby.
Yep. So, but it's only for the day. So what happens is when we get to contango and we have this convergence of the futures contracts and the spot price of the S&P 500, the contract has to reset. And on the reset, every quarter when the futures contracts reset, UPRO loses value, UPRO loses value because it's a long ETF. Well, if you're buying a long short ETF, if you're long a short ETF that's supposed to go up when the futures market when the markets go down, that reset will kill the profits. And so almost everyone that I've ever talked to in the space and traders and hedge funds and everybody says no, you don't hold these things long term. If you're going to trade them on the day, because they'll do triple the index. Or what you do is you short, and this is hard to borrow, but I borrowed it because I know that a lot of retail traders love these 3Xs. It's not that hard. Even though, that's another good point though. Even though it says hard to borrow, it's not that hard. The only thing that you have to worry about when you short something like this is that it will also go 3X up. So, you could be out a lot of money. And I don't think the options were particularly attractive. I typically like to do the ETF themselves. Yeah, a little on the thin side. Look at that spread, 20. No. Yeah, what is that spread?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. It's $3.80.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't want to do the options on this thing. The spreads are insanely wide. Not a lot of action.
That's only 3 days left.
Yeah.
That's the weekly.
I know it, and that should be really tight.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, you want to get worse? We'll go
it's $3. Yeah, $3 a spread. So yeah, the options are not particularly favorable. I mean, you definitely don't want to buy the puts on that. You'll get creamed on the spread.
Not a whole lot of interest anyways.
Yeah, not a lot of volume at all. Nope. So that's another thing. So so I would, because of the reset in the futures contracts that they need in order to generate the 3X returns, those resets almost always destroy part of the gains in the 3X ETF. So I would rather short a long ETF than buy a short buy long a short ETF. It's kind of confusing. But.
So the next question someone watching this later is going to say, well, how do I identify what's a short and or a long ETF? Where does it tell me that?
And just to do a search on Google. So, let's see. Here's a list of 3X ETFs. I'll just put this in the chat. You guys can do your own research. Let's see if there's one in here that we can. Here's an Ultra Pro Short S&P 500, SPXU.
Sounds like you're swearing at me.
I was.
Right?
Yeah. See, so now, see that this is how dramatic the declines can be. But see, I don't know how far you can go back there. That's on a daily. Let's go back to like last year from October to December. Yeah, you can go back. Look at that. So back in 2018, look at that period from the S&P 500 dropped about 300 points. No, it was
Well,
like
here's
down
15.
there.
This is way back. This is 2010.
Well, yeah, you can see that that's the effect of resets. They didn't
Right.
split this or anything. These are the effects of the resets. And so that's why I would rather short a long ETF 3x than buy a long short ETF. So zoom in on December 18th, from October to December 18th. Yeah, sort of right in there, I guess. No, yeah, you got to go back a little bit there, but yeah, there we go. Now this is a short ETF. It was last December, right? From October to December that we had a very large decline in the market. And you can see it went up a little bit. So it went from 32 to about 55, which was on December 24th. So it did go up, right?
Yep.
Yeah. You could have made some good money, but look what happened. I mean, right afterwards, of course, we started to go into bull run and the thing just fell apart. But those returns, that is let's say if you bought it at perfectly on October 1st and you exited perfectly on December 24th, you would have made a total of 3182 to 58, about 28, what is that, 18 points. No, 27 points. About 27 points. The S&P 500 dropped, I believe, over 350 points. So you have about 70 points of S&P 500 profits potentially on a short position that you lost in this because of the reset. Um, and so, we'd have to compare it to the S&P 500 on these dates, but I think it's not going to do as well as if you simply shorted something like UPRO. So
Yep.
let's see what UPRO did during that same time period.
Yeah, and Eric makes a good point there. And you can't short in your IRAs if you're trading your IRAs. That's why he's trading the monthly contracts now.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you can't shorten an IRA or I don't think you can do it in a 401k either.
So here's where UPRO is. That's 17. Where's 18? 18's right here.
Yeah, so from October to approximately December 24th. So you could have shorted. Oh, you have a little line up there. How about that?
Imagine that. Funny how that works.
58 to 28. That's a full 30 points on December 24th. So that's closer to the actual decline of the S&P 500 during that time. So that's a good full 30 points, and you would have had 27 if you went long on the short ETF. So you're losing out on a few points, maybe more than a few points.
Funny how, yeah. So you mentioned that line. Draw from back there. Gee, look what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good, and that's where I shorted. I think that's why you put the line in. I don't
That
know. Maybe
probably
we
is
talked
it.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I shorted right there at 59. And I got out a little bit early. I think I got out on the third or fourth bar there around 54.
And then it just made fun of you and gapped down and said, haha.
Of
So
course.
you're like, I'm still happy. Thank you.
Yes.
I always, sometimes I feel better when I leave money on the table now. It's like, okay, perfect. I wasn't too greedy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy.
Yeah, that's right. You can't be too greedy. I took my profits and it flipped me the finger, and I said, "Okay, have a nice day."
Exactly. SPXU too.
Yeah. Uh, that's a good one. Anyway, so we're seeing some weakness in the market. I think the that I mean, see what happens is really funny. As you pointed out, when we looked at the price signals, it was pretty clear that there was some selling coming into the market at the time, before that,
Yep.
and then all of a sudden the news came out. Oops, we're down.
Look at how much volume. Look at it, 400 right now.
Yeah, that's a big move. Yeah,
100 on the NQs,
yeah,
20
yeah,
on the RTYs. Yeah, these are large volumes moving down.
yeah. That's a big deal. Yeah, we'll see how the day ends up. But it just seems to me that there's so many headwinds to the market, and one of the big headwinds that we talked about last week was the fact that the Federal Reserve now is injecting billions of dollars into the overnight markets. And so they have to do that in order to prop up banks. Banks are getting hit really, really hard because of the fact that interest rates are so low. As interest rates go down, they can't get that spread that they need in order to generate significant income from their loan portfolio. Just imagine what's going to happen when when interest rates go negative and they actually are giving away loans. Has anybody got any kind of an insight into if anybody lives in a country that has a negative interest rate? Do any of you guys live in a country like that? Anybody? Because I'd be really interested to hear exactly how that affects people. I mean, just average people, not the banks or anything like that.
Or if anyone's at zero, anyone got a zero interest rate where you guys live, or zero or negative would work.
Yeah. I've heard a couple of people talk about this. One is that Danielle DiMartino Booth. I really like her. Um, she mentions that, hey, if I'm in a country that has a negative interest rate, what would be my mindset if I was just I'm just an average person sitting at home. I see interest rates are going to zero or negative. And what would my reaction be? Well, my first reaction is I don't want to put any money into a bank account because I'm going to get less out than I put in. So what would the country do in order to prevent people from hoarding money and hoarding cash? What steps could they take? And the only thing that there's a couple of different things that I suppose they could do, and one was really interesting, was to hold a lottery where the lottery winners, supposed winners, would be serial numbers of U.S. dollars of $50 or $100, if we're talking about the U.S. here as an example, that become worthless. So it's kind of a negative lottery. And so if you were holding those $50 or $100 bills or $1 bills or fives or tens, would that, let's say they only wanted to pick the last four digits of that serial number and said, okay, if you have a bill with those last four digits, it's worthless now. And so it's an incentive then to put money into the banks. I heard something else. That's pretty scary. The other thing is a bail-in. Do you guys remember what happened in Cyprus? Was it Cyprus? Yeah, Cyprus. Right? Yeah, Cyprus.
Back in 2013?
Yeah.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, Greece.
No, it wasn't Greece. It was the island of Cyprus.
I always get the two confused. I need to travel more.
I believe it was. Let me just do a quick, because yes, it's got to be Cyprus, because I used Ceylon at one time, and Ceylon doesn't even exist anymore. And it's another country name. That's how old I am. It used to be called Ceylon. Ceylon back in the 20s, 1920s. Okay. Yes. Cyprus money grab. Just go ahead and do a search in Google for Cyprus money grab. And this is what happens when the country is in such dire straits that they can't get the money they need to operate, and they need to do something in order to prevent people. So they can hold this negative lottery. They can make a lot of currency worthless. People are forced to put their money into the bank account. This is the worst case scenario, guys. I'm just saying this is worst case scenario, but who knows? So they hold the lottery. Everybody has to put money in bank accounts. Everybody puts money in bank accounts, and then they wake up the next morning and they take 10% of your savings right out of your account, and that's called a bail-in. So let's see if you. So Bank of Cyprus clients saw a percentage of the deposits exceeding 100,000 euros converted to equity, exchange of the seized funds for shares in the lender. I'm not sure what that is. That's not the same one. You have to do. No, that's. Go back, see if you can find an original
Different
article.
version.
No, it's a bail-in. Do Cyprus bail-in or something like that. Eric, have a great day. Thank you for joining us. See you soon, buddy.
Yeah, take it easy, Eric. Everything you need to know about Eric. Is it the Atlantic one? Probably not. BBC?
It should be Cyprus bail-in. Let me see if I can find a link, and I'll.
10% on savings is part of the $10 billion move. Maybe this is it here. They've reacted with shock of news to the one-day levy of up to 10% of their savings as part of the 10 billion euro bailout.
Yeah, that's it.
So they called it a bailout because they didn't think people would understand a bail-in. It's a bailout levy. See how they got tricky there?
Yeah, a levy. Yeah. It's just a little tax. It basically, it was kind of like a tax, but it was actually it was kind of part quantitative easing, part, money grab, cash levy, whatever you want to call it. The country was in such bad shape, right on a, near a bankruptcy of the country. What they did was they had, everybody's bank account at the end of the day, automatically, the next morning, you had about 10%. If you had more than 100,000 euros in there, you had 10% less. So you only had 90,000 euros now. Under 100,000 euros, you were shaved off about 6.75%, as it says there.
Wow.
Yeah. So you had 100,000 euros in. Well, the next morning you wake up, you had 10,000. Or I'm sorry, 10,000 less. So you had 90,000. Unbelievable. Who would ever think that a government would take such extreme measures in order to bail themselves out, because they were the ones responsible for the country being in such dire straits in the first place. They're the ones who owed the money. It was now the responsibility of the Cyprus citizens to help the government out. That's how they. That's basically how they said it.
You like this guy here? He's parking his bulldozer outside the bank.
Yeah, and recently, Argentina. We talked about this, I think, a couple of weeks ago. People were lined up at the banks because Argentina government placed restrictions on the amount of money you could take out of your bank. So that's another thing too. They only allowed Argentinian citizens to take out $500 in their currency a day from the bank, and that's it. It doesn't matter how much money you have in there. You can only take out $500 a day. Don't think that can happen in the United States. Think again. I believe it can. And especially if we go to negative interest rates. So we're still dropping on the markets. I think we're going to have a rough couple of days here. We'll see. But
Yeah, whenever we get these extended moves,
yeah, especially when they're far away from the cloud. Yeah.
Right. You never want to chase the trade. I've talked to many people over time. So when you start hitting this cloud again, I've seen this work. I'm not saying take a trade right now, but I've seen it work many times where once it reaches that cloud again, or the cloud catches up to it, whichever way you want to look at it, that has often been a good time for an additional position in the way to go short again.
Right.
That's not there yet. The Q just hit it or it's hitting it. Then it made a little move down. I have seen that happen before, so.
Yeah. So when it's really far away from the cloud, like on YMIX, there was some exited a short.
That's a 200 point drop right there. That's 200 points.
Yeah, and like, what is that on a 10-minute chart?
10-minute chart, yep. And then it went down to almost 300, almost hit 26.7 in a half an hour. Now it's going to come and break it again. See if we make a lower low. Rick says it happened in Iceland too. Which part that they put a run on the banks or interest below zero?
And they're still in negative interest rates too, also. Right. I think Iceland, Denmark, is Iceland in negative interest rates at this point? I think they are.
Yeah, Japan, Sweden needs to be done.
So any questions, guys, before we wrap up here? We got 10 minutes. Nick says that happened in Iceland also blocked your funds and only small amounts could be withdrawn and no money were allowed to be taken out of the country. Oh, that's another interesting thing too. Yeah. Oh, so you can't fill your suitcase full of cash and leave, huh? That's a no-no. Interesting. Huh. So I think there's lots of things that the country can do in order to prevent their citizens from actually benefiting from the lower interest rates and negative interest rates. The best, probably no wire transfers. That's right, Don. Yeah, absolutely.
Sham asked if TD's changed on their micros fees. I have no idea, Sham, because I don't trade in their account. That's one of the reasons. But if anybody's trading TDA in here, let us know if they ever adjusted. I don't believe they have.
I don't think so. No.
For the micros he's talking about, I think they're still charged the same full rate. Yeah,
I would be surprised if they did. I mean, I think they see that as a very small portion of their. And they have the platform, that they have the. So, I think eventually they will come down, but remember that the micros just came out in May, so they're still fairly new. TD Ameritrade will probably try to extract many of the fees as possible because they know that their current clientele, it's going to take time for them maybe to find another platform they want to use or another broker and transfer those funds. And when that tipping point comes, they're going to say, okay, we're going to lower our fees maybe now for the micros. But yeah, they're going to try to extract as much pain as possible and fees as possible from their clients. Yeah, so here's I don't know if you saw this story that the digital asset investor posted on Twitter about the guy who tried to take gold out of the country?
No, I didn't see that one yet.
It's, it's hilarious.
Jeez.
This, an Indian, he's an Indian, and I guess that's illegal for Indians to take gold out of the country. And otherwise, they probably wouldn't have stopped him, wouldn't have made any difference. But he hid gold on his body. I won't say where, but he hid gold on his body and tried to escape it and try to get on a plane to fly out of India. You know, how, I guess, I mean, it's not illegal to own cryptocurrencies in India. It was just that you can't have, evidently, you can't do fiat to fiat or exchange. The exchanges, they warn the exchanges that it's high risk. That's all. So all he had to do was buy whatever amount of gold he had, sell it in India, which is legal, convert it to the currency, and then buy Bitcoin. Put it out, letter to NOS, and fly. And it's not allowed for individuals in India.
To hold cryptocurrency?
All of them. So,
Wow.
but that's not what I mean. We get a lot of misinformation then, because a lot of people are saying that it's legal for individual citizens to own it, but the exchanges are warned not that it's high risk. So there are no exchanges either then. I heard that there's a law that is being considered in your government to allow the purchase and storing of cryptocurrencies. But you can have an account in the U.S., but it would be illegal. Oh, really? Yeah, it's a shame.
Wow.
Yeah, that's terrible. Boy, and you're 100% sure that's the case, because the stories that the information I have is that, and you own everything through your daughter. Oh, wow.
So she must be over here. We're not trying to get you in trouble.
Yeah, I know. Okay.
But it's interesting because I've worked with a lot of people from India in the past, and as a lot of them do, they come over here and they send money back to their families.
Right.
That would be of interest to be able to do that with cryptos, because they could do it a lot faster once the stuff shakes out. But yeah,
absolutely. Interesting. So, and a lot of people from China as well will groom their children. Well, there's like this whole thing. There's like an industry in China in which women who are just a few months pregnant are trained to come to the United States, to get their visas to come to the United States to visit family or whatever, and then stay here through their pregnancy and have the baby here, so they're U.S. citizens.
sure.
They go back to China, raise the child there, and then because they're U.S. citizens, they come back here. Now, Chinese citizens have a place to put all their money. They can take it offshore. They can leave it with their children who are old enough to take care, to do that in the United States, open bank accounts and stuff like that. He says there's a lot of spurious cryptos that sprung up in India leading to the ban. Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, you got to be so careful. There's a lot of, it kind of reminds me of the penny stock days, long time ago, when they first started cropping up. Really, really, I mean, basically just shell of companies that were issuing these penny stocks. Oh, that's too bad. Well, if you get any clarification on the whatever the government's going to do as far as legislating or regulating cryptocurrencies, please let us know. Boy, if India opens up cryptocurrency, or maybe they'll just say, hey, look, you can only buy and sell, Bitcoin or XRP or Ethereum or Litecoin or something like that. Even if they took just the top 4 or 5 cryptocurrencies and said that was legal, that would be an incredible thing, because, India is such a huge country and it's becoming, economic power. So yeah, thank you, Enric. Appreciate that. All right, guys, we are at that time. We got the NQ, LIM, ES, RTY all dropping.
All four are negatives now.
Yep. We'll see what happens. Should be an interesting day. We're still pretty far away from that cloud on the YM, but it doesn't look like it's really.
Yeah, they were trying to pop the up arrows, and they're not lasting. This,
Yeah.
this potential upside is turning back into more negative, so
Yeah,
I don't see much going anywhere. So we'll watch and see what happens for the day.
absolutely.
You're welcome,
All right,
Sean.
guys. Yep. Sean, you're welcome, guys. And Don, ZBGC are up. Yeah, well, GC should definitely be up. Wonder how SLV is doing. Gotta check out. Oh my. Yeah, SLV turned up too because this morning I was watching it was around 1590 or so. Now it's 1616. I was waiting for that to happen.
You got it, Don. Good to see you.
All right, guys. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. We'll see you on Thursday.
Take it easy.
Yep. Bye.
Eat it.